Hello everyone. Welcome to our Mother's Day live feed. So I'm really excited that today we're going to be talking about some wines that my mom really likes, wines that I like, wines that I think your mom will like. Really like a super fun lineup of wines, a real range of styles. And you know, here in California today, it's really warm. And so I'm super happy to be having this ice cold glass of white to kick off with. But I know that we posted a little tasting sheet here. Look, it's like a mini version of being in our restaurant. We have an incredible designer, Tracy, who puts together all these beautiful graphics. And it's kind of a fun way for us to come together. It's not exactly like being in the tasting room, but it's about as close as we're gonna get on this beautiful Thursday evening, afternoon, whatever it is where you are. So the wines that I have here, like I said, this is a line of wines that I know my mom would be really excited to drink, and that I think your mom would be excited to drink, starting with Gewurztraminer. And there's a whole category of wines that I think fits in with this, and I picked this in particular actually for a couple of different reasons. One of them is that my mom really loves these off-dry style wines. She is crazy for Riesling, she loves Gewurztraminer, she loves Muscat, and she also really loves Asian food, which is what these kinds of wines go great with. This is the perfect pairing for me for Thai food. This is a wine that is really unique. You know, Gewurztraminer is a grape that traditionally comes from, actually where it originated was in northern Italy. I think a lot of people think about Gewurztraminer as being something that's German. It certainly sounds German. It's a German sound, it's a German name. Gewürz is German for spicy. And it's called that because there's a spicy element to this wine that where it can sometimes taste a little bit like ginger or even white pepper, depending on where it's grown, how it's grown. It's just so pretty. It is one of the more feminine wines, and I mean that in the most amazing way. It's just so beautiful, very floral, extremely aromatic. I always get this like rose petal aroma off of Gewurztraminer that's really distinctive. And this is a wine that like I said, it goes great with Asian food, in particular Thai spice, because there's all of this sort of rose petal aromatics that you get off of this wine, along with like these tropical flavors. Today I'm getting a lot of like mango and guava off of it, which usually I get more melon flavors out of our Gewurztraminer, but you know, wines are a living thing and they change every day and different flavors pop out at different times. But for me, like with Thai food in particular, you get lots of really aromatic spices, lots of ginger, lemongrass, curry, which is why today I'm eating that with a little bit of Thai ginger cashews. Really good stuff. Not as good as the bruschetta that Matt was making, but it'll have to do. But I really like this wine, and I don't think anybody should be afraid of sweet wines, even if you're not a sweet wine fan. When you have it with the right food, there's something really magical that happens. So the next wine in the flight here is our Rosé, and you know, Rosé just continues to get more and more popular. I see somebody saying that girls are meaner, or girls are wieners. That's a good way to remember how to pronounce Gewurztraminer. I love that. You know, any hints, anything you can use to help you better explain what you're talking about is awesome. Anyway, so Rosé. So Rosé is something that for a long time wasn't very popular. People didn't really think much about Rosé. It was a tricky wine because due to oxidation, like in the early 20th century, you didn't really see them because they would just be too brown. But then became this trend where people would make these rosés with really beautiful, vibrant color, and they really took off. Specifically in the south of France, you see a lot of it down there in like the Provence area. And traditionally, Rosé started as kind of a byproduct of making red wine. So as they were making red wine, they would do what's called saignée, or bleeding off. And so they would pour off a little bit of wine as it was still fermenting. It would be pink, and that would increase the ratio of skin to juice, making a bigger, darker, richer red wine. So, but what they discovered was that, man, when you pulled off that little bit of pink wine, it was really good. In the United States, I think most people first started associating Rosé with White Zinfandel. And that was a really popular style of wine. There's not a whole lot of that around anymore. These days, I think we've all come to expect Rosé to be dry like this. And it's really good. really aromatic, super fresh. It's got lots of these kind of light red fruit flavors. So you get like cherry, watermelon, strawberry. You know, where I grew up in Washington State, they have these cherries. They're called Rainier cherries. And those are the white ones. There was a little bit of pink. So it's a cherry, but it doesn't have all of the dark flavors. And that's what this wine reminds me of. Really bright and fresh and crisp, fruity, not really sweet, but a real vibrant freshness to it, which I love. Rosé is really great with all kinds of food. You know, one of the things I like to do rosé with is salmon. If you grill some salmon, put it over put it over a salad. It's a really great combination. Things like chicken, like cold chicken, like if you have roast chicken and have it cold the next day, drink it with a bottle of rosé. That's a pretty epic pairing. You can have it with all kinds of things. Seafood, you can even have it standing up to some meat dishes, as long as you have something that's maybe not too heavy or hearty of a preparation. It can work. It really bridges the gap to all of it. Oh, another thing I really love with rosé, these friends of mine make these things called wine chips, and they make this manchego cheese flavored wine chip, and that and rosé is really awesome. Something really salty, really brings out the fruity flavors in the wine, which is pretty good. So, you know, other rosés that are out there, there's a whole range. Of course, we have our sparkling rosé. You can find rosés that are a little fruitier, a little darker. You can find rosés that are very, very pale, that almost look like white wine. But try them all. It's really fun to see the range of rosés that are out there and the styles that you can expect from them. So the next wine that I have here is our etched bottle, and people ask all the time about these bottles and what's in them. I also see a question coming up about our Scottsdale location. Stay tuned. We don't know when it's going to open. I think there's a lot of things that we don't know about in general right now, and I know I can't wait to get down to Scottsdale because I love Arizona, and it will be the closest Cooper's Hawk to my house now. But you know, we'll find out. We'll certainly keep you posted. It's going to happen. We just don't know when. So the etched bottle. So we do etched bottles on a lot of different seasons. We do them at Christmas, Halloween. We do them. What else we do? Thanksgiving, 4th of July, lots of different ones. The blend somewhat changes from bottling to bottling. And we actually create a unique wine for this. So it's different from any other Cooper's Hawk wine that you can get. And you know, the funny thing is, I don't know how much of these I've tasted. They're so beautiful. I always admire them in the tasting room, but to actually sit down and open one and try it, they're great. I mean, look at how pretty that is. It's just a beautiful bottle. We have a couple of different ones here. Really unique, really playful, and very pretty. So, Mom, when you and I get together, we're gonna drink this one right here. So this wine is pretty fun. It's a blend of 77% Cabernet and 13% Malbec and 10% Merlot. So this is actually, you could call this a Meritage. It is a Meritage. Those are classic Bordeaux grape varietals that are blended together in the style of Bordeaux. So it's just not labeled as a Meritage. And what I love about this is the high amount of Malbec in it. And Malbec is such a distinctive aroma profile. Malbec to me gives you lots of violet, a lot of blue fruit, a lot of black cherry. It's a very, very aromatic, very vibrant, and also really dark. And when you look at this wine, you can see that it's got a really vibrant, dark color to it. And it's really good. It's so aromatic. It's a lot prettier than I expected, if that makes any sense. Pretty, but in that it's just like all this like violet and like almost like black olive. These really beautiful high-toned aromatics. My mom loves Malbec. She just said Malbec, so this is definitely a wine for her as well. It's a gorgeous wine, and that Cabernet just gives it lots of structure, lots of power, lots of weight. Again, that blend is 77% Cabernet, 13% Malbec, 10% Merlot. You know, I always say that in a Meritage, it can be any mix of any of the Bordeaux grape varietals, which are Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Merlot, Petit Verdot, Malbec. For reds, there's some other grapes too, like Carmenere, some other kind of different varietals. But you can have a blend of any of those and call it a Meritage. And you know, typically you see a lot of Cabernet heavy Meritage wines, and what I love about Cabernet in a blend is that to me, it creates like the shoulders of a wine. It's the structure, a hanger, like everything else kind of hangs off of it. It's the framework of the wine. And with this wine, you really see that backbone of Cabernet, and then this beautiful, I don't know, like velvet coat of Malbec that's on top of that. It's pretty gorgeous. So really fun wine, and I'm excited to actually have a chance to taste it here. So the next wine is our Camille Brave. And I'll take a chance to answer questions. I see lots of things coming through before we go on to the Brave. I see lots of people who miss the tasting room. I miss the tasting room too. It's there's something about the conviviality of people coming together in that tasting room that's just magical. It's a special experience, and it's a special place, and it'll be back. We don't know when, but it'll be back. Hopefully sooner rather than later. And luckily in the meantime, we can still taste wine, which is great. And have it with food. You know, it's because at Cooper's Hawk, we really design our wines to go with food. It's sort of the opposite of a lot of restaurants where you see a restaurant that makes food, it's great food, and then they make, they buy wines to kind of match with the food. At Cooper's Hawk, what we do is we create these wines that are meant to go with food. So they are wines that are never meant to overpower. A lot of times you see big, powerful wines that are so big, they kind of dominate whatever you're going to eat. And these wines, all of our wines, you have them, they're delicious, and then you have it with food, and both the food and the wine just come alive together. And that to me is really the magic of food and wine pairing. So let's go on to some Camille Brave. And I see lots of questions out there about Camille Proud. I'll talk about it in just a second. So Camille Brave is it's a very special wine to me. As many of you know, this is Camille is my middle name. And I wanted to do a wine that was really a tribute to strong women. And, you know, when backing up a little bit, so when Tim McHenry, our founder, came to me and said, I'd like for you to create a wine, and we want this to be your passion project, you know, do something that speaks to you. I knew that this had to be a very special wine, and I also knew that at Cooper's Hawk, typically, when we do special wines, they're Cabernet based, like our Etched bottle here. And Cabernet is fantastic, but to me, Cabernet is a very masculine grape. It's like kind of like a men's suit, beautifully structured and tailored. And I wanted something that would be powerful but feminine. And I mean feminine like big and loud and big lips and hips and sassy and loud mouth and wonderful. And for me, those varietals were things like Syrah and Zinfandel that have a lot of weight to them, can certainly be powerful, but are very juicy and also very spicy. They're sassy. And so this, the base of this wine is Zinfandel. And, you know, Zinfandel can be really different depending on where you grow it. And in particular, I love Zinfandel from Sonoma County, where it's a little bit of a cooler climate, and so you get a lot of bright acidity, which makes it really, it's just important because that makes it work well with food. And so a lot of the Zinfandel for this is coming from Dry Creek Valley, which is, it's a warm area, but it's up a little bit closer to the coast than some of the other Zinfandels you see in America or in California. Then the other components are Syrah, which I thought was important to have those blue notes. And so Syrah will give you lots of blue things like violet and blueberry and boysenberry, kind of deeper, richer flavors like that. Also herbs. You get lots of like black pepper and clove, black olive, smoke, sometimes even a meaty flavor like bacon. And all of that complexity really is a nice balance to the intense fruit that you get from Zinfandel. The first vintage, we had a little bit of Morvet and Petite Syrah in the blend. This vintage is really heavy on Zinfandel with just a little bit of Syrah. So creating the Camille wines is about finding something that is, finding kind of a voice for the wine, and then consistently having the blend match that vintage after vintage. So, so with this one, it's Brave. It's the first wine in the series, and I've always felt that, you know, I think we all have our own sort of alter egos, and I've had those moments when I needed to call on my own inner badass, my own inner Camille, and that's what I named the wine after. So taste it if you've got it in front of you. This is tasting so good right now. You know, like I was saying before about how wine is a living thing that's always changing. It always evolves, it's always changing in the bottle. And it's one of the challenging things with wine is that it's always changing, because you can have days where you open a wine, it just doesn't really taste that great. And maybe it's just going through a trajectory in its lifespan that's not great, or maybe it's maybe you've saved it for too long. The only way to know is to open it. But this was a wine that I remember when it first went into the bottle, the oak was really standing out. It was kind of like a little angular, and I knew it was going to come to a place where it was really integrated, and it has really gotten there. Today, it's so silky, and those strong oak tones have really kind of melded into the wine, or melted into it. So what I'm tasting is really vibrant fruit. Lots of black cherry, blackberry, raspberry. It's a powerful wine, but it still holds all of this elegance. It is the powerhouse feminine wine that I had in mind. So I'm really proud of it. So with this label, I'll tell you some stories about what's going on with the label on this wine. So you can see there's a lot going on. So we worked with a designer in California to help us come up with this label. And I wanted this to be something that was really beautiful. I wanted it to feel like a special bottle and the kind of wine that you wanted to have just because it was so beautiful. As you may have noticed by a lot of the clothes I wear, I like bright colors. I like bold, artistic patterns and things. So that kind of had to be an element of the label on this as well. But there's a whole story behind it. And what you see in here is in the background, I'll hold this up again. So in the background, this pattern is actually vintage wallpaper. And it is, and as you can see, it's like super tropical. It's just so pretty. And then the woman isn't anyone in particular. So this is black and white photography that's been hand tinted. It's sort of reminiscent of like old vintage Japanese photography that was really traditionally hand tinted. And I really love the way that looks. Her clothing is out of an old painting. Who knows whose clothing she's wearing? But I love the bright colors. And then around her head, you find all of these other symbolic elements. So we have laurel leaves around her halo here, and that represents glory. And then on her head are different flowers. We have hollyhocks, which symbolize strength of character, and then also gladiolas, which symbolize ambition. So really fun, little hidden story in there. And like I was saying before, the woman on the label is no one in particular. It could be you, it could be your neighbor, it could be one of our Cooper's Hawk team members. And that was really the point. That I really wanted the women on these labels to speak to everyone and to not be, just beautiful models. They're meant to look like anyone. And the labels, each label as we go through the different vintages will represent a diversity of ages and ethnicities, just a whole mix of women that make up our whole community. There's also one other little hidden gem that I like to leave as an Easter egg on here that I'll tell you all about, and that is this little starfish in the corner here. So that is actually a symbol of my partner who helped me come up with the name of these wines. And so there's a little Valentine that you find on every single label. So the question that you're all asking is about Camille Proud. And I probably shouldn't even be showing this to you, but I'm going to because y'all deserve it. I happen to have a little bottle of Camille Proud here. So just a little sneaky preview. You can see some similar things there. That beautiful wallpaper, lots of symbolism in there as well. I'm really excited for this to come out. I know that we had talked about whether or not to release this. Actually, it should have already been out. We were going to release it at the end of April with an event, and I'm really sad that we weren't able to do that, but we really felt that it was important for all of us to drink it together. So this wine will come out in July. You can see the label. She's wearing armor, sort of inspired by Joan of Arc, and I think that at this time to have a wine that really symbolizes strength and bravery and pride, that this is really a really special time for this wine to be coming out. So I'm really proud of this wine, and I'll be really excited for all of you to taste it as well. So ask me questions. What else would you like to learn about wine? We can talk about these wines. We can talk about any wine that we have at Cooper's Hawk. That we will continue to be doing some really fun Educational pieces, I've been filming quite a few today. We actually have some things coming up talking about Italian grape varietals, about rosé, some more cocktails, and I really love it that all of you have been so inspired by the videos that we've been doing. I see somebody asking about my favorite white. I'm a sucker for bone-dry Riesling. It's one of my favorite things. I love white wines with a lot of acidity, things that are very vibrant, lower in alcohol, so I can drink more of it. That's kind of my top pick on white, but I drink it all. It kind of depends on the food I'm having with it. As far as the John Legend collaboration, that was a really fun wine. We do have another collaboration coming up. I'm not going to tell you who it is, but it's a musician I think that you'll all recognize. The difference between Brave and Proud, Brave is based on Zinfandel and Syrah. Proud is influenced by the right bank of Bordeaux and is a blend of Merlot and Cabernet Franc and Malbec. So totally different. Let's see. So many questions so fast. Let's see. Everybody misses their monthly tasting. I miss them too. Last bottle of Origin, I love that as well. So the May wine of the month, question about that. The May wine of the month is dry. It's a Sauvignon Blanc from Chile, which is similar to New Zealand Sauvignon Blanc. Lots of acidity, really citrusy, really vibrant. It's delicious. I've been drinking as much of that as I can get my hands on, which isn't easy from California, but really great. Cigar pairings with wine. Cigars, I recommend with darker red wine, something that's heartier, something with a lot of weight. Either of those would work with cigars. Stay away from whites. I think that these are so crisp and refreshing. You know, I like bourbon or darker spirits with cigars. You want to have like good dark wine with your cigar as well. It'll influence it really well. Ella, the Chilean Sauvignon Blanc is so springy. It is like springtime in your mouth. It's so grassy, so luscious. It is like your go-to spring wine. Wine to go with steak dinners. Big red wine. Like there's something so great about the weight of Cabernet to go with steak. It's kind of the ultimate steak wine to go with. Best wine with shrimp, kind of depends on how it's cooked. If you have shrimp that's being cooked with lots of butter, then I would recommend having some wine that's a lot creamier. This is when you want to bring out the Chardonnay. If you're doing shrimp that's more like a ceviche or something that's very, very delicate, think about Sauvignon Blanc, lighter, crisper wines like that. The June wine of the month that's coming up is a really special wine. I can't even talk about it without crying because I think it's just so special. But it's called Resilience. I've been filming videos about it today. It's a really special wine. It is a blend of red wines. It is the most complex blend that we've ever created. In that we are representing all of the different grape growers that we work with from around the world. So it's a powerful wine. It's really special, and I think it really speaks to the resilience that all of us are drawing on to face the times that we have ahead of us. So it's really great. Talk about a great steak wine. It's a powerhouse. So cheese pairing with the June wine, I would say hard cheeses, something that's a little bit firmer, saltier. That would be a great combination with it. Chilling a red wine before drinking, I actually like to do that. I have this kind of rule of thumb where I pull my white wines out of the refrigerator about a half an hour before dinner and put my red wines in, or else I keep my red wines cool in general. A little bit cool is great because what it does is sometimes if you pick up a glass of red wine, you smell it and it kind of burns your nose a little bit. Alcohol volatilizes faster than, basically evaporates faster than water. And so if your red wine is warm, literally the alcohol is starting to evaporate off of it and it'll burn your nose. And that's not a pleasant feeling. So if you have your wines cool, it sort of suppresses that and it allows you to smell and taste what's in the glass. White wines, if they're too cold, you can't really taste them. They're just refreshing. You get the acid and you get the chill, but you don't really taste the wine. So you don't want those too cold. You don't want those too warm. Sort of my rule of thumb. But at the end of the day, whatever you like to drink is what matters. And do what you like. If you want to put ice cubes in it, put ice in it. If you want to drink it warm, do that. You know, like again, you're the one drinking it, and that makes you the expert on the best temperature for your wine. So I saw another question. Now I can't remember what it was. Temperatures for reds and whites in your wine fridge. I like to keep my reds at about 58 degrees, 58 to 60. That's also a good temperature, a sort of cellar temperature, and that's a good temperature also for aging. So if you're holding on to something for a period of time, then you really want to then you really want to have it nice and cool so that it ages really long and consistently. If it's too warm, you'll start to get some oxidation in the wine, and it just won't age as evenly. So yeah, keep it nice and cool. You know, whites, you can keep the whites at the same temperature. If you're ready to serve them, keep them served in the, keep them stored at the temperature that you like to drink them at. Question about Cooper's Hawk Chardonnay. Which one is the most buttery? It's our Lux Chardonnay. That is a wine that has the biggest, richest, most tropical flavors. It stands up the most to new oak. It's certainly, it's a really big, rich Chardonnay. It's delicious. And then what we do with the new oak barrels that we age our Lux Chardonnay in is that we then use them the second and third time for our regular Chardonnay. So that's not quite as oaky and buttery. And then of course our unoaked Chardonnay doesn't see any oak at all. And it's just really fresh and fruity. Question about how long can you keep a bottle of unopened wine? It depends on the wine. You know, I mean, this is the conundrum that wine collectors all over the world face, is like, when do you open the stuff? Because, you know, if you let it sit for too long, like if you let this rosé sit in your cellar for 5 years, 10 years, you'd be really bummed out because it's not going to be as good. This is a wine that's really meant to drink young, and what makes it delightful is its fresh, fruity flavor, and over time it's going to lose that, and there's nothing else really there that gets better with age. Versus something like this wine is really great right now. It's big, it's powerful, it's dark, it's fruity, and as it ages, it's going to really change. And so what will happen with wines as they age is they lose that fresh fruitiness, and that transitions into something else. In the case of this, you know, these reds, it will start to turn into more like dried fruit, lots of like nuts and spice and really complex, nuanced flavors, things like coffee and tobacco and cocoa and tea, and like really interesting flavors. And that's what makes wine fun, is when you start to like really pull out these crazy flavors out of what is in essence just fermented grape juice. You know, other wines as they age, you know, something like this as it ages, once it loses that fresh fruitiness, it'll start to taste kind of nutty. The flavors will be really muted, and there just isn't a whole lot there. There are white wines that age. Actually, Riesling. You know, you can take Riesling and age that for 20, 30, 40 years, depending on it, as long as it's a good vintage. And those wines are spectacular. So it really is based on the varietal, the style of wine that's being made. It takes some educated guessing and some understanding of the vintages and who's making the wine to know how long it'll age. I know that doesn't really answer your question, but you know, typically bigger, darker red wines can age longer. That being said, 95% or more of all wine is consumed within, I think, 48 hours of being purchased. So people buy wine and they drink it, and that's you know, at Cooper's Hawk we aim to please. And so all of the wines that we make, they're meant to drink right now. So even wines like our Barrel Reserve, which we've held back and aged longer in barrel, when you get it, you can drink it today. You can hold on to it for another 10 years if you want, and it will change. You know, but it's ready to drink now. It's just a different experience. So, any other questions? And if I can, I'll go back and answer more of these later on for you as well. Oh boy, a question about sulfates. All right, so that's always a fun one to talk about. So, okay, sulfates. What is it? It's sulfur. Sulfur is used as a preservative, and it's used in so many different ways. And it's used all over the place in winemaking. It's used in the vineyard to stop powdery mildew. It's used to sterilize barrels. So if you want to have barrels without any bad bugs growing in them, you use a little bit of sulfur for that. It's used as a preservative. Sulfates are also used in all kinds of other foods. So jam, juice, if you ever buy trail mix, anything with dried fruit actually has the highest level of sulfates of just about anything you can purchase. Most seafood has sulfates in it. And in truth, most people aren't bothered by sulfates. And so this is the misconception when it comes to wine, is that people smell they drink wine and they're like, wow, every time I drink wine, I get really puffy, I get a headache, my face turn red, my hands swell up, I get congested. That's actually not the sulfates that are doing that. That is histamines. And the really bummer about that is that histamines are naturally found on grapes. They're found in the grape skins, and they also are a byproduct of fermentation. So if you have an issue with histamines, most likely you will find that drinking white wine gives you less of a reaction than red wine. And even if white wine gives you trouble, you could take a Benadryl before you drink wine, which in turn will probably make you just fall asleep. You could consider drinking other things. You probably will find that you'll get that with lots of alcohol, but wine for sure will give it to you. So yeah. Let's see. Oh, somebody asked about the lime trick with Riesling. Okay, it's actually not lime, it's a lemon. So I do this trick in the restaurant that's really fun. You can actually do that with your Gewurztraminer. If you have any of this in front of you or any other wine that's like lightly fruity where you're like, is it sweet, is it dry? I'm not really sure, maybe it's a little bit sweet. So you do this trick where you taste the wine and you talk about like, okay, so on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being bone dry and 5 being really sweet, how much sugar is in this wine? You might think like, oh, it's probably like, 3 or 4, something like that. And then on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being very low acid like milk and 5 being really high acid like a lemon, how much acid is in the wine? And usually people are like, somewhere in the middle, and people are kind of all over the map. And then what you do is you bite into a lemon and you taste the wine. And what that does is it cancels out the acid in the wine. So when you're tasting it, because you've had something that's more acidic than the wine, all you taste is the sugar, and all of a sudden it's like, damn, that wine is really sweet. And then you turn around and you eat a maraschino cherry or have a spoonful of jam, and you taste the wine, and all of a sudden the wine tastes bone dry. It's the craziest thing. So what happens is that your mind plays sort of tricks on you, your palate plays tricks on you based on whatever you eat. It will change the way that your wine tastes. And this is why we talk about food and wine pairing and why it's important. Because what chefs don't really think about this. They think about their food as being finished and it's out and it's good to go. And sommeliers know that no, actually, whatever you're drinking, this is like another ingredient in the food. So if you're drinking this Gewurztraminer with our shaved Brussels sprout salad at the restaurant and it's got all that citrus on it, that's going to make this wine taste really fruity. And if you like that fruitiness, it's tasty. You can even have that dish with something like Sauvignon Blanc and it will just taste more luscious and juicy. And that's that's a good, pleasant thing. However, if you have those same wines with dessert, like some people might say that Gewurztraminer is like a dessert wine. It's so sweet. Well, try it. Try it with dessert. You're going to taste it and it's going to taste totally sour because it's not as sweet as the dessert. The sugar in the dessert is so much sweeter, it's going to make all the acids show up in this wine. It's the craziest thing. So think about that when you're matching your food and wine. Be aware of the levels of acid and sugar. So yeah, next time you're in the tasting room, if they happen to have a sweet wine, ask them to bring you a slice of lemon. It's a really fun way to see how that works. And speaking of the Brussels sprouts, I see somebody here loving the roasted Brussels sprouts. I love that appetizer too. That has some sweetness in it. There's some sweetness in the sauce that goes on that. So when you taste that with this wine, the wine actually won't taste as sweet. And it's actually a great pairing. I love those two together. Let's see, can we share? Oh, story about how I got into wine. So like most sommeliers, I was working in restaurants while I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. And I was going to college and I decided at a certain point that I wanted to work at really fancy restaurants because I'd make more tips, which was true. But when you go into these fancy restaurants, what you discover is that there's this whole other world of just the theater of dining. And I really love the ritual of multi-course meals and all the beautiful glassware and silverware and all the different kinds of foods, and watching these really, really talented chefs do what they do. I mean, this is something that, every sommelier out there can cook. We all love food, and we've spent enough time in the kitchen to understand cooking techniques. And so if you ever have a chance to eat with a sommelier, you'll probably have a pretty good meal. But the other thing about working in fancy restaurants is they have big wine lists. And so I had to start studying because I was really in over my head. So I went out and bought Wine for Dummies. And I recommend that to everyone. If you're very first starting out, wine is one of those things. If you scratch the surface, you'll fall, 500 feet. It's just so much information, and it becomes overwhelming really fast. So I started out with Wine for Dummies and cross-referenced the list and got a kind of a good framework for understanding wine. And I just fell in love with it. I love the stories. I love the taste. I love the culture. And I happened to work at a restaurant that had a massive wine list. We had 1,500 bottles or 1,500 different labels, which coincidentally is the same amount of labels that we have at Esquire in downtown Chicago, which has an incredible wine list. And so when you go and you look at a massive wine list, and it's just, there's so much wine, you just want to learn more. And I realized pretty quickly that is what I wanted to do for a living. And so I began to pursue studying wine instead of studying what I went to college for, and I was an assistant sommelier in that restaurant and became the lead sommelier, and simultaneously was taking my exams, and I became a master sommelier in 2008, and I'm still learning. It's not the end, and there's always new vintages and new wines and new regions, and you can never learn it all, which is what I really love about this industry. And as far as about it being a difficult test to take, yes. It is the most difficult exam in the world. Why? Because there's no curriculum. It's not like if you learn this, you will pass this. It's incredibly difficult. It's basically you are being tested by your peers as to whether or not you've mastered your industry. And there are 4 different levels. There's the introductory sommelier program, and there's the certified, and the advanced, and then the masters. And they obviously they get progressively a lot harder. But to give you an idea, the master sommelier exam starts out with there's 3 portions. There's theory, which is it's all the book learning, and it's intense. It is really intense. It's like soil types, wine law, all the different regions and grapes, and all of the book information, understanding the ripeness level of Riesling harvest in Alsace for this style of wine versus that style, and understanding spirits and beer and sake and all kinds of things. Back when I was studying, it also included cigars, which thank goodness that's gone, but because there's not a lot of restaurants that serve cigars anymore. So that's one part of the exam, and at the master's level, that is oral. Then the next part is service or practical, and that's really about testing your skill in all the practical sides of being a sommelier. So you're walking around, part of it is walking around a room that's sort of set up like a restaurant, and you're doing wine service, you're decanting, opening champagne, making cocktails, answering food and wine pairing questions. It's very intense. It's like being in a restaurant with the worst customers ever. Not because they're horrible people, but just because they ask really hard questions. And then there's also a portion of that examination that's about your ability to run a wine program, testing your ability to understand how to run the numbers and how to be a wine buyer, and how to buy at auction, how to they're blind tasting spirits, so understanding how to recognize like bourbon from aged rum and so on. And then the last portion is the blind tasting, which I think is the thing that most people find to be the most intriguing. In that section, you have 25 minutes and you have 6 wines in front of you, 3 whites, 3 reds typically. And in 25 minutes, you talk about what they look like, smell like, taste like, and you identify them by the grape variety, the region, and the vintage. And it's really about showing that you really in-depth understand not just how to describe what a wine tastes like and smells like, but also how to understand how to match up your sensory evaluation of it with what theoretically makes sense. Like, where in the world would they make a wine in this style? You know, what are the grape varietals that are similar that this could possibly be, and really kind of deductively work your way in. There's no tricks. They're very classic wines. You know, as you get to the master's level, you find some aged wines in there as well. Most of the tricks that are played in that exam are all in your own head. So it's challenging, and it's given once a year. So there is a movie out there about it. It's called Somm, S-O-M-M, and it's the first movie is following a group of guys as they go through taking their Master Sommelier exam. You'll actually, if you watch that, you'll see some little cameos of me in there. I look really different, but because it was filmed quite a few years ago. But we will likely be doing a live viewing of that movie for Cooper's Hawk on Somm TV. So stay tuned. That should be really, really fun. I would really look forward to watching that with you. And yes, there is on Hulu, there's Somm Into the Bottle. It's the second movie. It's more about winemaking and all of that. So how long did I study before the exam? It's kind of hard to say, because it's not like you just go to school. I was working the entire time. I took my introductory exam in 2001. I took my master's in 2008. But again, everybody sort of has their own trajectory on that. And some people, okay, Mom, I see. Yes, how many people? Some people take it many times. I passed it on the first time. So my mom was the first person that I called, and she's saying these boots are made for walking as soon as I called her, and we celebrated over the phone. It was pretty awesome. But yeah, it's a difficult exam, and it takes many people, many tries to pass it. So it was a pretty special experience for me to have done that. And like I said, I still study, and it's not the end of the journey. And people ask also, why did I leave those restaurants with big, expensive, crazy wine lists, and why would I be at Cooper's Hawk with the level of wine knowledge that I have? And the truth is that what I've always been drawn to in this business is the hospitality side of it. I really love showing people a good time. And even when I was at the 5th floor restaurant, we had bottles of wine that were $10,000. What I really loved is when somebody would come in and say, they'd look at that list and be like, and I could see that they were uncomfortable, and to find them something that was financially or price wise was something they were totally comfortable with, and also something that would blow them away. And to turn somebody onto something, no matter what kind of their price point is really fun for me. And so for me, it's not about great wine has to be really expensive wine. It's about what you like. I mean, one of the things I always tell people is people who say I don't know anything about wine. So I say, well, do you know what you like? Like, well, I know what I like, but I don't know anything else about wine. That automatically makes you an expert. No one can tell you what you like. Only you know what you like. So once you've identified what you like, so say you like Gewurztraminer, well, I can tell you what you might also like, Riesling or Moscato, or if you tried sparkling Moscato, or if you want a red, there's some other things you could try. And so we can start to take you down a path of trying some other fun things. It's again, you are the expert of your own palate. So don't let anybody tell you otherwise. And there's nothing wrong with whatever you like to drink. I like to drink things that you might not like to drink, and that's okay too. So let's see. My mom's feeling very proud out there. I see that. I just want to show a picture here. This is my mom and I, both of us looking very, very young. So happy Mother's Day, Mom, a little early. I have another good picture of us here too. This is one of my favorites. We are both wearing wigs in that. So I'm really, really thrilled that all of you joined me today. And it's as you can see, I have no problem talking about wine. I can go on and on and on about it. And I love finding people like all of you that are on right now who also love to talk about wine on and on and on, because we have that in common, and it's fun stuff. And it's, one of the greatest things about wine is that, you usually share it. You know, like, yes, I can drink a bottle of wine by myself, but most likely I'd be sharing it with somebody else. And there's something about the bringing people together with the conviviality of the table that is something that is more special than the most luxurious wine on the planet. So I love sharing that with all of you, and I look forward to sharing that with all of you in person soon, very soon, I hope. But we'll do this again. Let me know if there's any themes that you'd like to see. We'll do a flight of whatever you want. We could do rosés, we could do some summer wines. I think Chef Matt and I are going to do a really fun live event coming up around barbecuing. I think he's going to show some good barbecue tips, and I'm going to talk about some cocktails and some great wines to go with barbecue, because just like springtime vegetables require different kinds of wine, so does barbecue. So I would certainly love to see all of you again and answer all your questions about barbecue wine. So thank you. It's been a pleasure. Cheers. Happy Mother's Day, Mom. Goodbye.